Okay, welcome back to Third and 23. I'm your host, Alex. Just finished my off season to the off season. It's been a few months since the Super Bowl, since I released the video, but now it's time for my off season videos as we lead into the 2026 football season for both college and pro. We had a good 2025 there, especially towards the end. I hope you guys tailed me on that alternate line in the Super Bowl, laid the 9.5 with Seattle. Told you guys I was going to be a blowout. But anyways, now we move into the off season. We're talking college football overs that have piqued my interest. So win total targets here. I'm gonna give you three teams whose win totals I like their over. It's piqued my interest. Teams that I could be looking at some point this summer to maybe put something down on an over on the over. So we've got Oklahoma at 7.5, USC at 8.5, and BYU at 8.5. And by the way, BYU is an interesting one because as you can see, the juice is at plus 105. So Vegas, look, I frequent thinks BYU is going to hit under that. It's weird to me. While other books have BYU around minus 125. So a lot of variance there when it comes to BYU. But we'll go ahead and get into that in a second. So let's go ahead and start off the breakdown. We're going to start it off with the Oklahoma Sooners and that 7.5 win total. So if you watched Oklahoma play last year, you remember John Mateer. He looked good the first month of the season. He breaks his hand. He comes back from the injury against Texas, throws a few picks, looks really bad in that game, and they kind of look weak pretty much the rest of the season. You could say step up a competition, or you could say the hand was affecting him. I'm going to lean on it was the hand. Plus, now he's got another year in this system. And on top of that, upgraded wide receiver options. They bring back their starting wideout or their number one wideout from last year, Isaiah Satania, but then they go into the portal and they get Trell Harris, a starting wide receiver from UVA. They go into the portal and get Parker Livingston from Texas. He was a contributor in Texas. So now you got better targets, better options at the wide receiver position. At running back, they bring back their top two running backs from a year ago. Last year they were young guys, expecting them to, make a typical jump in their second and third year at OU. So overall, I think the offense for Oklahoma is going to be much improved with Mateer, an extra year in the system, healthy, better wide receivers, and more experienced running backs. And then on top of that, defensive continuity. You know Brett Venables, he knows defense. Yeah, I know they lost R. Mason Thomas on the edge. They still bring back Taylor Wine on the edge. They still got big guys in the middle of the defensive line. They have Kip Lewis returns at linebacker, probably going to be in a finalist or in the running for the Buckets this year. He's going to be an All-American caliber linebacker. Owen Heineke also returns at linebacker. He got granted an extra year of eligibility from the NCAA. So you got your experience there at linebacker, and you're very good at linebacker. And then they're deep in the secondary. They bring back most of the guys in the secondary. Cortland Guillory was a great freshman in the back end. Peyton Bowen is back for his senior year. So you got a lot of really good players on the defense. You've got a much improved offense, in my opinion. And I think you got a favorable stretch in the midseason where they could get some momentum. They've got Kentucky, Mississippi State, and South Carolina, three teams that I think are going to be at the bottom of the SEC this year. You get those three in a row, and then they got a road game in the Swamp. I think the Venables defense is way too good for what the Gators have at quarterback. So you're talking about 4 straight wins there. Earlier in that, they have a Georgia, Texas back-to-back with a bye week in between. That's going to be tough, right? But after that, I think they got a favorable stretch there to get some momentum going into the final stretch, and they finish off the year with Missouri. So 7.5. I think Oklahoma is good enough to get back to the college football playoff. I think they're better than they were last year. So 7.5 seems really low. Not really sure why it's this, other than maybe they think the schedule is too difficult for them to navigate. But like with LSU and A&M at the end of the year, but those are in Norman. They got a lot of big games in Norman, so it's not like they're going to lose out at home. So 7.5. I really like the over 7.5 with Oklahoma this year. I think they're a team that's likely. I'm not ready to predict it yet, but likely to make it to the college football playoff. All right, moving on to the next team, we got the USC Trojans. Now, they're a little different. I think their schedule doesn't set up that great for them. You got a stretch there in midseason of Oregon, Washington, and Penn State. Oregon and Washington, though, are at home. Penn State's on the road. You got to go across the country to face Penn State. We don't know if that's going to be a whiteout night game yet. But I don't think that Penn State, which is basically Iowa State East this year because Matt Campbell took all of his players and brought them over to Penn State, I don't think they're going to be as good as people think. And then when we're talking USC here, we're talking about elite offensive talent. Maueva's back at quarterback. I think at a minimum, he's going to be in New York City for the Heisman. He's got Tanuk Hines back at wide receiver. They go in the portal and get Terrell Anderson, a starting wideout from NC State. So now you got two legitimate starters. And then they brought in a bunch of freshman wideouts who were early enrolled in the spring, and the camp reports where they have been killing it. So you got to expect a couple of them to step up and give Miles some really good options at wideout. Then at running back, King Miller, Wayman Jordan, one of the best duos in the country at running back returns. This USC offense is going to be explosive with Lincoln Riley calling plays. They're going to put up a lot of points. So you got to think USC's offense, big strength, one of the maybe the best offense in the Big Ten. Defense, it's always a hard ceiling on what USC can do defensively, right? It's for whatever reason. They've got some experienced players back. The secondary particularly is very experienced coming into this season. But the big thing for me is they go out and they hire Gary Patterson to be the new defensive coordinator. Now, if you guys don't know who Gary Patterson is, he used to coach TCU for a long time and was known for having great defenses year in and year out at TCU. He's going to come in. It's a hard ceiling on how good they're going to be. This USC is not going to be shutting teams down defensively. But I think Patterson can get them to a level where they kind of counterbalance that outstanding offense that we're expected to see for USC this year. So I think they can manage that schedule well enough to where USC could contend potentially to make the college football playoff. And 8.5, I think USC at a minimum is a team that can win 9 games this season. I think, especially getting Oregon first on that 3-game stretch, I think that's a game where they can knock off Oregon at home. Not ready to call that yet, but I like their chances in that one. All right, and then finally, let's go ahead and get into the third and final team, the BYU Cougars. This is a weird one to me. 8.5 is crazy to me. So you got a favorable Big 12 schedule. There's no Texas Tech, and even though Sorsby may or may not play, it doesn't matter. Texas Tech is probably still going to be seen as the best team in the conference. They don't play them this year. Their road schedule in the Big 12 this year is teams like at Kansas, at UCF. For whatever reason, they're going at Colorado State in the non-conference. They do have to go on the road to Utah for the Holy War, but Utah's going to regress. They lost their coach, their OC, their best players transferred to Michigan. Their starting 5 of the offensive line all moved on to the NFL, and that was their strength last year. Utah's going to be a completely different team this year. BYU, Bear Bachmeier, as a true freshman at quarterback last year, looked like a veteran. You got to expect a year 2 leap, right? So you expected him to get better. Running back L.J. Martin returns for his senior year. I was shocked. I thought he was going to go to the league. He returns for his senior year. He's going to be one of the best running backs in the country, an All-American candidate. Wide receiver is an issue. It's a weak spot in terms of returning production. But then defensively, they bring back, I think they were top 10 in returning production on defense this year, especially at corner. Evan Johnson and Trey Alexander at corner, one of the better corner tandems in the country. Veteran defense in the back end and at linebacker, and actually at defensive line as well. So veteran players defensively. I think a great backfield, the quarterback running back situation. And I think this is a cupcake city schedule. 8.5 to me is crazy. When Vegas had the juice at plus 105, I would think people are leaning under. This is not an 8-4. They're not losing to teams like UCF and Kansas on the road. It's just not going to happen. They do have to play Notre Dame at home this season, so they could potentially lose that game. But it's going to be a big game at home. I think BYU probably be undefeated by the time that game comes around. So all in all, I just think that this 8.5 number doesn't make sense to me when BYU was good enough to nearly make the college football playoff last year, and they're probably going to be that good or better this season and have a very favorable schedule with no Texas Tech this time around. So anyway, that wraps it up. 3 teams, BYU 8.5, USC 8.5, and Oklahoma 7.5. 3 teams that I would lean over on at this point in time. If you like the content, please like, comment, subscribe, all of that. As you're going to continue to see more off-season videos for both pro and college football as we continue to move toward the regular season. Take care.